New research reveals that the majority of us have reservations about borrowing from banks. Surprise, surprise. Poor service is up there, putting us off, apparently, according to a new online lending and borrowing exchange company called Zopa. Well, Giles Andrews is the CEO and co-founder of Zopa. Giles, thanks very much for coming on the show this morning. First question needs to be, what's Zopa mean?
ZOPA stands for Zone of Possible Agreement, which is an economics term, basically around are the grounds for a deal. So if you imagine from your schoolboy maths two Venn diagrams, two overlapping circles, the gap in the middle is the zone of possible agreement.
Oh, fantastic. I've learned something new this morning, Charles. Thank you very much for enlightening me on that one. I mean, it's not rocket science, is it, that we're not happy with banks at the moment for various reasons. Obviously, the bigger issues here because of, what's happened over the last 18 months to 5 years.
I think there are a couple of issues involved. So firstly, I think, is that people have discovered, as a result of the credit crisis, that banks were doing things with their money that ordinary consumers didn't understand. It actually turned out that the bankers didn't really understand them either. But I think that's been a huge reason for erosion of trust, in that people related to banks as sort of old-fashioned, steady, solid businesses that in fact were doing weird and wonderful things which cost money and required taxpayer bailout.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's true. When you went to the bank, you took it as gospel that, what they were telling you is exactly what was going to happen. But, I've looked at my ISAs and all the rest of it over the last 18 months. I have to say this is getting slightly better now.
Right.
But you go to your financial advisor or the bank or whatever it is, and it's like, oh, put this money away. No, there's no guarantees. And it always says there aren't any guarantees. But, they didn't tell me I was going to lose that much money.
No, indeed. And I think the second area of concern is that consumers like you and I have seen the action the Bank of England took in terms of dramatically reducing interest rates down to historic lows of 0.5%. And that's been reflected in the rates that banks pay their savers. So old people in particular who perhaps live on their savings have suffered enormously from the falls in savings rates. But those cuts haven't been passed on to borrowers. So amazingly, borrowers are actually being charged more money today than they were before.
When's it all going to change? I mean, how long's a piece of string? I know, but let's try and be optimistic and look a little bit forward here, Giles.
Well, it's difficult for banks because they're under enormous regulatory pressure to continue to restore their balance sheets and recoup past losses. So while governments are doing their best to encourage them to lend, especially in the banks that you and I own shares in now, and consumers are obviously clamouring for credit, and small businesses as well. It's difficult for banks, so I don't see it changing in the short to medium term. And I think people are looking for interesting alternatives outside of the banking sector.
Like what?
Well, there's been a rise in what we call peer-to-peer lending businesses in the last few years, where real people are lending money to other real people, and a business is sitting in the middle, performing a role of a marketplace where it effectively vets the borrowers to make sure that they're the kind of people who are going to repay, and then administering the loans on lenders' behalf. And in that scenario, lenders get to set the rates that they choose themselves to lend money to real people. And interestingly, from our survey, we found that 83% of people said that they preferred to see interest payments benefiting individuals rather than bankers. And in that world, that can happen. I mean, effectively, it's a modern day version of a credit union, right, where there's a sort of tangible reality around it, as there has been for centuries in credit unions. It's just happening on the internet.
It's fantastic. If I want more details, Giles, because I'm interested, I have to tell you I'm interested, where do we get all the details from?
Well, have a look at a peer-to-peer lending site such as Zopa.com.
All right.
On the web, and that should give you the information that you're looking for.
Okay, excellent stuff. Giles, thanks very much for joining me today.
Thank you.